The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Yo, Philly, how you's doing? Welcome to Philadelphia Baseball, past, present, and personal. I'm Bill Kashatus, your host on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. This week, I'm pleased to have as my guest David Amaro, the eldest son of Ruben Amaro Sr., a Gold Glove award-winning shortstop for the Phillies from 1960 to 1965. For nearly 50 years after his playing career ended, Ruben Sr. continued to serve the game in many capacities: scout, coach, manager, and more. After a battle with cancer, Ruben Sr. died earlier this year. His passing came just 9 days after the death of his longtime colleague and friend, Dallas Green. His son, David Amaro, is vice president of IDR Marketing Partners, a privately held full-service marketing agency located in Berwyn. David is also the director of the Philly Bandits Tournament Baseball Club and a board member of the Ashburn Callis Foundation and the V Foundation, which raises money for cancer research. Welcome to the podcast, David.
Good evening. Thanks for having me.
Let's begin with the patriarch of your family, Santos Amaro. And I am pronouncing your last name correctly, am I not? Amaro?
Yes, it is Amaro.
Okay. Had it not been for the baseball's racial barrier, the Amaro family would have been the first to send 3 generations to the major leagues. Santos, who was born and raised in Cuba, certainly had the talent to play in the majors. But as a man of color and being born in 1908, he never had the opportunity to do so. But his son, Ruben Sr., and grandson, Ruben Jr., did have that opportunity. Tell us about your grandfather, Santos Amaro, and his baseball career.
Well, he really did have a long and we'll actually call it an illustrious career. He played both in his native home of Cuba, and I believe he played around 17 years of professional baseball there, and then also played in Mexico for, I think, equally 16 or 17 years as well. And having been a native of Cuba, he is actually in both Hall of Fames, both baseball Hall of Fame. So it's kind of a neat, kind of a neat thing. But he was just a big, gentle teddy bear of a man, and really a real dark man, And he was imposing because of his size in a time when people were not so big. So, but he was gentle and caring, and he really was a good person.
Mm-hmm. Your father seemed to have a lot in common with him. Both men resembled each other in physical appearance and disposition. Both have been described as gentlemen. I could attest to that. I knew your father, but they were very aggressive competitors on the field. Both also valued education and encouraged their sons to pursue it. As you already noted, Santos Amaro belongs to the Mexican Baseball Hall of Fame. So does your father. They were the first father-son duo to be so honored. And while Santos was known as El Canguro, the kangaroo, for his size and leaping ability, his son, Ruben Sr., was sometimes called Cangurito. What was their relationship like?
It really was. It was fun to watch them together because they had a playful camaraderie almost. Because at one point in their career, I believe that my grandfather Santos actually coached my father in winter ball, and I don't know that was noted, but
wow.
But they really had I should say just a wonderful relationship, and like you said, they both really. One learned from the other, obviously, but education was the most important thing in my father's life, and he wanted to make sure that his sons were well educated, and that came from his father, Santos. So they had a wonderful relationship, and Ruben Sr. learned a lot from his dad, Santos.
Now, Santos had another son. Is he not a physician?
He is. Mario is a physician and anesthesiologist, since retired, but worked in Philadelphia for many years, and was, obviously so proud that he had a super educated physician as a son, as he was of his other son, who was a professional baseball player. But Mario is still alive today. I believe Mario is about 89 years old, 88 or 89 years old right now.
Oh, God bless him. The Cardinals signed your father in 1954, and he reached the majors 4 years later in 1958. And did he have some war stories about Solly Hemos and the way he was treated? But it doesn't seem as if the Cardinals organization was really that broad-minded in the 1950s. And it didn't seem like your father was actually paid too much attention to when he first came up. The uniform he was issued was several sizes too big, but he wore it without complaint until a teammate and a future Hall of Famer, Stan Musial, told the equipment manager to get him a uniform that fit. And your father once said that interaction with Musial was a highlight of his career. It's kind of hard to believe when your father won a Golden Glove in 1964 as a Philly shortstop. Sounds like he was a pretty humble man, though.
He really was, and fairness and all of the the racial inequality that really was prevalent at that time, was humbling. So Dad didn't say a word, and all he did was go about his business, and he just remembered the kindness and for somebody of such prestige in Stan Musial, for him to single that out and get that issue taken care of was something that he talked about many times and appreciated, and it really was a highlight because it allowed him to be a little more comfortable with what he was trying to do, and just be as good a baseball player as he could.
Mm-hmm. Now, the Cardinals were not the only team that your father played for. He played for the New York Yankees after he left the Phillies, and then I guess his last year with the California Angels. And he coached, obviously, in the Phillies organization, but also the Chicago Cubs organization. But he once said that he had a P in the middle of his chest for Phillies. And he was proud of the fact that he played behind Hall of Fame pitchers Robin Roberts and Jim Bunning, that he was the first base coach for the 1980 World Championship Phillies, and a special assignment scout when Jimmy Rollins and Ryan Howard, who were key to that next World Championship team, were discovered. Tell us about how special your dad's relationship was with the Phillies.
Well, some folks that were really, really instrumental in his life and folks that he admired, David Montgomery, Bill Giles, and the owner at that time of the Philadelphia Phillies, Rollie Carpenter. My dad had so much respect for those guys, and he learned a lot from them, and they certainly were men that were ahead of their time. They just wanted quality people around them, and my dad just really learned a lot from them. And then takes us to the next point where he just really enjoyed and then became very close with Dallas Green through the Phillies organization. So it's just been something that he lives in Philadelphia. He lived in Philadelphia for many years, I should say, and he met my mother there. We were, the kids, we were raised in Philadelphia, and it's just the Philadelphia Phillies was home to him. So he said that until he passed away, in the spring, that he wanted to die with a Phillies P on his chest. So and that's a true story.
Mm-hmm. Your father, as you mentioned, was extremely close with Dallas Green. Their relationship was so tight that in 1983, a year after Dallas left the Phillies as manager to become the Cubs general manager, he brought your dad to Chicago to be the team's third base coach. I guess under Lee Elia, he might have been the manager back then. What was that experience like for your dad? I mean, leaving an organization like the Phillies that he'd really grown up with and moving to Chicago, although I guess it was kind of familiar to him because back in those days, we called the Chicago Cubs Phillies West. Dallas took so many former Phillies with him that it really was like another Phillies club. But how'd your father feel about that move to Chicago and the time he spent there?
Well, I mean, he obviously enjoyed it, but it was a real difficult decision because I'll say a mentor, a friend, just a very close person to him and my mother and his wife. You know, I'm talking about Dallas Green. You know, my dad would do anything for him and just believed in Dallas. So he decided that he needed to go and do this. And it was difficult because he didn't want to leave home. We continued to live in the Philadelphia area, and there was a lot of commuting going on and such. But, you know, I actually was in college at that time. But it was very, very difficult because, you know, he was, you know, Phillies red through and through. But he did decide to leave and go work for and be with his confidant, so to speak, Dallas Green.
Mm-hmm. You know, many younger Phillies fans, you know, really did not know that much about your father. They certainly knew the name Ruben Amaro because of your brother and his time as a general manager with the Phillies. And it's kind of sad now that, you know, Ruben is not with the Phillies because a lot of the Latino players that he brought in are, you know, now finding their way on the major league roster, and it would be nice for him to be able to enjoy the fruit of that labor. But he is considered as the person who really got the Phillies to make a strong commitment to Latino players. But I remember that it was your father who back in the 1970s helped the Phillies make inroads in Latin America. He signed such talents as Julio Franco and Juan Samuel. And then there was a gap there. I guess there was a gap after your father left to go to Chicago, where Bill Giles and company just abandoned the Latino market and really paid for it too. So I guess it would be more accurate to say that your brother brought that market back and really cultivated. Would that be correct?
That would be. Absolutely. Dad had so many connections in Santo Domingo and Puerto Rico and Colombia and Mexico, Venezuela, and set up, you know, academies as well as having different scouts that would put together little clinics, and then, you know, Dad and some of the Phillies scouts would go then cross-check and go, you know, watch the players play, and they really developed something special. And obviously you see the amount of talent that comes out of those countries, and it did. There was a lull for a while, and my brother realizing, you know, that there was a void there, really kind of beefed that up when he became the assistant general manager and general manager with the Phillies. And it's, you know, it sustains a lot of talented young men that come out of those areas. So, yes, Dad kind of started it. He was a little bit of a pioneer as the Latin American coordinator. And then, you know, obviously Ruben Jr., you know, picked up the ball, so to speak, and continued to work through those areas.
I understand that your father had hoped to become an assistant when your brother, Ruben Jr., became general manager of the Phillies after the 2008 season. Unfortunately, it didn't happen. But I'm curious, did did your father ever want to manage in the majors, and did he ever have that opportunity?
He absolutely would have loved to manage in the major leagues. He did not. He did not have that opportunity. He did interview for a few jobs, but did not get those jobs. He did manage, in winter ball in Mexico and also Venezuela, where a lot of the up and coming young AAA and above type players would work out and play in the off season, aspiring to make the big league teams in the spring of that following year. But he absolutely would have loved to. He just never got the opportunity. And like I said, he just loved being around the game and being involved with the game. But he would have liked to manage, certainly.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's turn to you, David. You also made quite a name for yourself in baseball. Pretty successful high school pitcher at Penn Charter, a very good first baseman at Duke University. You were later drafted by the Chicago Cubs. Why did you pursue a pro career? I mean, that's the Amaro family business.
Well, actually, I did. I did get drafted, and I did play almost 2 years in the minor leagues, but I got hurt early, and I tore ligaments in my wrist. And it's a shame because probably in today's environment, surgery would have repaired things, and I would have continued to play. But so I had a very short career, so to speak, and did not get a chance, to see if I could have made it. But not to say I would have made it to the big leagues. But I did get an opportunity. I was asked to stay in the game and coach at that time. But I was so young. I mean, I was literally 24 years old, and my career was over. And it was hard to accept. And I just didn't want to get into the coaching scene because I thought I could still play. So I never did, and subsequently came back home and started my business career, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Well, what about this next generation? I know your son Andrew went to the University of Maryland and was drafted by the Phillies. Where is he now?
So my younger son Andrew, he played at Penn Charter and the University of Maryland, and he was drafted by the Phillies, and he played a couple of years in the minor leagues, and was subsequently released, and he always wanted to coach in college, and he was coaching at the University of Delaware last year, and now he's the recruiting coordinator for LaSalle University. So he's staying in baseball at the collegiate level and just loves it, and probably will remain there as long as he's successful. So he's there, and then Robert, my older son. Oh, go ahead.
Right.
Okay. So, and then Robert, my older son, he went to the University of Virginia and played baseball there, had some injuries himself, Tommy John surgery and also labrum surgery. So he graduated from the University of Virginia having had a year of eligibility left. So he went to graduate school at Temple University and played that last year at Temple University healthy. And as he was getting his master's, actually Temple University's last year that they had baseball before they shut down the program. He's now in the tech world, living out in San Francisco with his wife, and they're doing very well, working out for these big tech firms, and they're again living out in San Francisco. Hopefully, we'll get him back to the East Coast at some point.
Now, your dad also had two younger sons?
Yes, so Dad remarried. Mom, my mother and father, they split, late in life. They had been married about 20 years, and then Dad remarried and had two other sons. I have two half brothers that are essentially the same ages as my sons. Like 20, 25, 26. So it's kind of funny. So I have younger brothers that are the same age as my sons. One did play baseball and is now the general manager of the winter ball team in Venezuela called the Maracaibo Aguilas, and he's doing quite well. And then my other one, whose name is Ruben Andres, incidentally, is businessman working in and doing very well in the Fort Lauderdale area.
Mm-hmm. And your brother had two daughters, and I understand they're pretty good soccer players.
Yes, they are. One is now a freshman at Wake Forest, and she decided to go to Wake Forest, but she wasn't going to be able to play at that level, so she's not playing soccer there, but she's really enjoying her collegiate life as a freshman. And the younger one is a sophomore, and she's doing well, and she's going to school here in the area, well, actually in Jersey, in Pennington, and she's doing very well.
So the Amaro family business actually continues, both in terms of education and baseball, which is reassuring to hear. And we know that even though you've gone into the business world, you're still connected to the game as the director of the Philly Bandits Tournament Baseball Club. Tell us about the Bandits. It is one of the most successful amateur teams in the Philadelphia area. We all know that, but how did you get started in that? And tell us about the fortunes of the team.
Absolutely. So, obviously, my brother Ruben Jr. and I owe a lot to baseball. I mean, baseball afforded us the ability, with my dad and mom's direction and yearn for us to be educated folks, gave us the opportunity to go to two wonderful colleges. Ruben got a chance to go to Stanford University, and I got a chance to go to Duke University. And without baseball, we don't get into or go to either one of those colleges. So Ruben and I decided many years ago, actually 20 years ago, we have to do something to help and perhaps give young student athletes a platform to be seen. And that was when we developed the idea of the Philly Bandits. And the Philly Bandits has been in existence for about 21 years. We're very different than any other travel program in our area because we're a nonprofit. It's, it's not how much money we can spend and lose. Our coaches aren't paid, and everything's volunteer. And we really have done a decent job getting the young players exposure to the point where I had 3 phone calls tonight from different college programs asking me about our players, and it's off season right now because they know that we select players that are very good students that care and respect the baseball game and play hard. And our goal is really that our motto is each player is a student, and they're constantly working towards achieving academic success. But we hope that they'll mature both physically and mentally. And by doing well in school, it opens doors that otherwise may not be open to them. So it's another extracurricular that we feel is very, very important to helping these guys get an opportunity to go to school. So we stress the academic side, and that came down from my father and my grandfather, and because we know it opens up doors. And then what you do with it is up to you at that point. But we've gotten a chance to place many players. A lot of our guys are in college now. Some have played professionally, and several have become business folks since they have played. But my ultimate goal is to see some kind of a network develop and friendship develop through all of these successful young men that have gotten a chance to play in the program. And, it's really, really something special when we've had some guys that have signed for a significant amount of money, and when I get a phone call or I get a note and they say, Coach Dave, listen, I just want to thank you for what you've done and the platform that you've given us to succeed, and they make a donation to the program and they pay it back and then we help other kids get a chance to travel and play in the program. So it's really something we enjoy doing. Obviously, Ruben Jr. is not able to be there during the season, but off season he's there helping and instructing, and because he's on the baseball field, obviously. Matter of fact, he's now a New York Met of all things. Just happened about an hour ago. So that's really the story behind the Philly Bandits.
This conversation was going so swimmingly until you mentioned that one, David. That's a hard pill to swallow. It really is.
You know, it is.
Is that what the Oh God was about a moment ago?
Yes. I think it was.
I looked at. Yeah, I looked at the your roster of alum from the Bandits, and it truly is impressive in terms of the Division I talent that you have turned out, and you have had several guys go pro. I mean, the most recent one is Nolan Jones of Holy Ghost Prep, who was selected by the Cleveland Indians in the 2016 draft. I believe he was a first-round pick. We knew Nolan through the Whiz Kids before he went over to the Bandits, and really an exceptional player, though he was shifting between shortstop and third base, and I guess the Indians signed him pretty much to play third base. But the contribution that you have made to the Philly Bandits is exceptional, and I know that there are many families around here that do appreciate it, and I can't emphasize enough the teacher coach role that you play, which we know you got not only from your father but from your mother's side too, because she is, or I guess was, an exceptional teacher at Frankfurt Friends School. But you also have another commitment, actually two other commitments. You serve on the boards of the Ashburn Callis Foundation and the V Foundation. Tell us a little bit about those organizations and their missions.
Absolutely. So the Ashburn Callis Foundation is run by Rick Meller, who is one of my coaches and Penn Charter, just wonderful men who along with Richie Ashburn's son, Rich Jr., when Richie passed, they started this foundation, and they said, look, we have to do something in Rich's name. And then when Harry Callis passed, both families decided that they wanted to have this organization be joined together. And what we do is we do camps throughout the Philadelphia area in hopes of educating kids through baseball. And it's really wonderful, and they're free camps. And we try to go to areas that may be less inclined to play baseball, so that we bring equipment and we donate bats, balls, and teach them and have fun with it and try to get people excited about the sport. So that's the Ashburn Callis Foundation, which is really something that is near and dear to our hearts. And Ruben and Rick Meller are, basically the founding members of that organization. And I also am part of the Philly Friends of the V Foundation, which is the Jimmy Valvano Foundation, which we raise money and do different home run derbies and things to generate revenue, golf outings, and support cancer research. So that, again, is also something that's very, very important, and some things that we really dedicate time to try to get rid of that horrible disease. So I guess that's
David,
that's the overview.
Thank you. Thanks for all your contributions to amateur baseball in the Philadelphia area, and thanks for being with us on the podcast.
It's my pleasure, and it's great to talk to you, Bill, as always.
And thank you, Philly fans, for tuning in. See you next week for another podcast of Philadelphia baseball, past, present, and personal. This is Bill Kashatus, rounding third and heading home on the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network.